Hello and welcome to another video. So today we're taking a look at Daria Runecraft. This is actually a pretty good deck at the moment, at least from what I've been playing it. It's your pretty stock standard Daria for the most part. No overindulgence in followers, no overindulgence with spells, more of just kind of a nice little bit of balance, which leaves it being pretty stock standard. We are only running the one Chimera, as you don't really want to be having too many of those as your big drops like that, especially since Daria will be most likely discarding them if you're not dropping them quick enough. So you're basically better off just stocking up things like Golem Assault, Conjure Golems, those sort of cards that spawn things, while also focusing on return and removal, and obviously getting the boost on everything here: Ogglers, Blade Mage, Daria, Enchanted Sword, all of those cards, giving you a really nice boost. There's not too much else for this deck. I mean, you get Daria out occasionally, it's not also always necessary. When you do play it, usually you're going to be ending the game, or just straight up swarming the board. So, hopefully you guys enjoyed, and we'll get right into some games. Okay, so our first game here is against Haven. Haven is pretty popular, mostly the Storm variants being the most common, but there is some Elena and Seraph variants floating around, and some hybrids, which we may cover soon because that looks like an interesting deck to play. We start off with a pretty good hand. Getting your 2-drops early is nice. It's a pity we don't have anything decent to spell boost though, but considering what is in our deck, getting stuff to spell boost isn't usually that hard. With the way the current meta is, this deck does okay. Forest is still going to be a problem no matter what deck you play at the moment, just because of its burst potential, both in its aggro variants and OTK Roach variants. And we luckily get two pretty good cards, the Chimera and the Daria. Both being 9 cost, spell boostable down, should keep them even all the way to the last play point. And Magic Missile getting to go face. Always a good place to send it. The triple golems are a little tricky to play with, just because you do have to get the value out of them. But they're a nice card to have, especially if you do have to go into turn 6 and you can just play them for 4-6, get 3 conjure golems, and then next turn swarm the board by spell boosting everything 3 times. It's always a nice thing to have. Also, you could probably put Owl or something in this deck in some form. I personally haven't been using Owl in this just because I found that it just doesn't quite mesh with this deck in particular, with the way it's structured. Levi just has a little bit better versatility with its Crimson Sorcery and its body. Owl works much better in a lot more spell heavy deck than in a follower deck like this one, where you're only running 4 followers that can be spell boosted and a handful of spell boostable spells that you're relying on to just keep the tempo up on board. But of course, your evil deeds gonna clear off everything here. Kinda sucks. Daria is within playable range, which is always a nice thing to have with this deck. I do wish I had the fancy Daria, but alas, I don't. So we do play the Chimera, just because I don't really have any other decent play. And this way I can at least start spell boosting things more. Probably could have played that first and then spell boosted, but I wasn't sure how I wanted to play this out, whether I went Chimera Daria or not. And of course, the Tenko healing, so we know they're going to have some form of Elena in this deck. So making sure to remove these is very important. This is where something like Time Worn is a little bit better than Owl. Crimson Sorcery gives us some good value with the trades, especially against decks like Haven, where they have quite high health totals. So as long as we can outvalue them, we're going to be pretty right. Do hold the Daria just because, you know, 0 points, no point in really playing it. We've also got the 1-cost Ogler, which I'd like to play out. Unfortunately, we are going to burn that second Daria, which is always an unfortunate thing to do when you're playing Daria. And again, they go for a Tenko play, but not really an issue. That draw might have been a slight mistake. I probably should have just left it and just tossed it. But we get a pretty good hand. The Enchanted Sword being boosted plus the Wind Blast gives us some potential to clear. We'll also get in the Collider, which is a great return. This opens up a really nice way to just clear things out without really losing any value from our board. The only risk is the fact that we could easily be decreed, which would pretty much screw us, except for the fact that we do have a Daria. So that is some potential at least to restock our hand again and play the board. This deck's pretty much dead to double Bahamuts or double Decrees, stuff like that will clear you out a couple times and make it really hard to recover. But most of the time it's pretty solid. Next up we have a Rune match. Decks that are currently popular seem to be Haven, Rune, Forest and Dragon. 4 out of most of the decks pretty much are really good. Shadow is also being really good at the moment. We've just got a really balanced meta, which I like to see. It does leave things being a little stale when they're pretty similar functioning decks, but it's still nice to have that variety of class. Insight, your ideal turn 1 player is any Rune player. Except, obviously, Dirt Rune. May as well Golem Assault, no reason not to. Especially with a follow-up next turn of Conjure Golem plus Angelic Snipe. But with the amount of spells this guy is playing, it's pretty safe to assume that he's aiming for some form of either D-Shift or just straight up Daria Rune as well. Angelic Snipe though, gets its 1 point of value to the face. And of course they play their own Golem Assault. Completely ignoring it though, just going for the double Commence Experiment. I suppose they don't want us to get the value on their Golem. But we can go for the return, set up our own, little Fate's Hand, our Ogla, whatever we really want to play. While also getting some nice damage to the face and protecting ourselves. That's what I like about this deck, it's just got really nice value with what you get to play and the effects that you get. Plus it's fun. Fun's pretty important. So the Wind Blast works really nicely against pretty much anything that Rune can throw at me. The double Chimeras are a little bit of a pain, but having to use both of them to remove that ward works in our favour a little bit, especially when we have our own Chimera, a Wind Blast, and basically anything else we need to play out here. So we do Insight, just searching stuff, see if we can get anything before we start going into these Wind Blast combo stuff. Conjure Golem, Chimera, we can clear this board off, we get to keep the Chimera as a 6-2 and we get a 2-2 Clay Golem. While having a nice Enchanted Sword, Blade Mage and Angelic Snipe for some pretty good rush damage, and a Daria to restock her hand after that play, if that's the route we decide to take. Of course they use their Wind Blast, they want to get rid of this Chimera. Taking 6 damage to the face would just be way too much. So I start off with the 1-drop spell, get that value. Then deciding we just, throw out the Clay Golem, we have another Blade Mage, we can hold on to that, maybe get some use out of it. If not, it's not a big loss. The Darias just give us so many options. Although the longer I hold this Daria, the more risk I'm out of drawing another one, which would just suck, so a little bit of a risk. And of course, there it is, the other Daria, which we definitely didn't want. Our opponents played very similar to us. They look like they're going for a pretty controlling Dirt Rune, which against this Daria is actually pretty fine. since we do get some really good value with those piercing runes, the Time Worn. Well, Time Worn, unfortunately, without the evolve, is nowhere near as good. But we did draw our third Daria, which, you know, that's a huge swing to be able to just Daria into Daria. So they take the double Angelic, killing off our Daria, give rid of our Clay Golem. So they've used up a little bit of removal. Always a good thing to see. I decided to go with the triple Conjure, just so I can set something to the board instead of taking the Insight play. And lucky I did, because that Giant Chimera is gonna hurt.
Not here. Not now.
But we've at least got a chance thanks to these Conjure Golems. Insight would have been better played before that Conjure, but it's okay. Sometimes ordering, while you can get better plays out of it, most of the time you can do okay after. As long as you didn't screw up your lethal, you're pretty fine. So searching out whatever we can get. We've already dealt as much damage as that hand was probably going to give us that turn. And we've set up double ward, so their only real good chance of victory would be another Giant Chimera or a multiple D-shift combo. And we do see another Giant Chimera, but with its damage spread out, it's not going to look too good. Because we managed to soak up exactly 14 damage, or 13 damage, or whatever it was. And with the luck of our hand, Magic Missile, Angelic Snipe, Blade Mage, more than enough to go for damage. Okay, and our last game is against Shadow. This is going to be a longer video, so if you've stuck around, thanks. Starting off with a pretty meh hand, honestly. There's not really any other way to describe it. It's not bad, it's not good, it's not really worth throwing against Shadow when Wind Blast and Magic Missile can clear off some of the early game. And the Fate's hand is pretty good value. Luckily the Daria draw makes this hand a lot better, just because those spell boosts are quite good. Taking the priority on the draw though, because that's more important at this point of the game. And we see Staircase. So Staircase in Shadow always makes me wonder whether they're going for an Atomy or they're going for something else. But just take the Conjure Golem. Play it safe this turn, not worry too much. I mean, they've gave us some pretty calm turns. Making sure they can't easily, you know, easily trade things is always good. So double Demon Eater and a Skeleton. They're definitely pushing that so they can proc the Stairway to Heaven. But we're going to block off this board pretty well. Get this little Fate's hand out. Get our second one out, just so we can spell boost everything in our hand. Especially since it is costing 1. Hold on to the evolves, just because we don't want to risk losing those, and we don't want to give them those 3 draw in that turn. Even though they probably would have burned 2, I think I still made the better play. Just holding off. But now they got a pretty good board. Luckily, Glow is going to fill that back up a little bit, meaning they will at least burn 3 of the cards in their next draw, which is good for me. But a bunch of small things again being thrown at me. The one big difference between a lot of Shadow decks and Daria decks, Daria's swarming is more 3 health than 4 health bodies, whereas Shadows are more 2 and 1 health bodies. So I can usually 2 for 1 with a lot of my followers, whereas they can't. But theirs are also a lot cheaper and a little bit easier to play, so their early game can be a little bit stronger, but now that we're at turn 7, I should be able to come back from this. Playing the Daria, see what we can get out of it. Not the best hand, I mean, it's okay. We do get to clean up one of these 1/1s, leaving less value for Hector to come down. And our double blade mage for 6 damage is always solid. The only risk is that we don't have a decent draw next turn. That's provided they can clear this. And luckily it doesn't look like they can. No Hector just to get that value, so closing out the game. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, we will have the deck list in the description below. We're trying to have some fun decks before rotation comes out, because there's not many other decks to cover this month that are competitively viable. So I'm just trying to cover things that look interesting, have some fun stuff in them, and that you guys can just, you know, mess around with before the rotation happens. After rotation does happen, there'll be a lot more to cover with the unlimited format and the rotation format. So look forward to all that, and I'll catch you guys next time.